This morning talk is on the fundamentals, three fundamentals. And according to H.P. Blavatsky, the three fundamental propositions of the secret doctrine serve as a basis for students to understand the philosophy presented in the secret doctrine. To me, to this student, it's a synthesis of the metaphysical philosophy in Theosophy. So what are they? First fundamental proposition is this. There's an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle which is beyond the power of human conception and beyond all thought and human speculation. Let's go over that again. The first fundamental proposition is that there is an omnipresent, means to this student, always present, eternal, meaning without beginning or end, boundless, without limits, and immutable, unchangeable, principle, which is beyond the power of human conception and speculation. Now, some cultures or religions, this thing, is referred to as the unthinkable and unspeakable, the source, the all in all, the all, or the absolute. It, presented as a principle, is the one absolute reality. To this student, this means it goes on with you or without you. It precedes all manifestation, meaning the phenomenal or manifested universe comes after it. It is the so-called rootless root of all that was, is, or ever will be, meaning the causeless cause of everything that's past, present, and future. According to the secret doctrine, it is beingness as opposed to being. It is Sat, absoluteness itself. It is the divine essence of the ever-present reality. Now, in the secret doctrine, the one absolute beingness, absolute reality is symbolized by two independent aspects: absolute abstract space, absolute abstract motion. Now, absolute abstract space represents naked subjectivity, according to the secret doctrine. That's the essential nature or substance of something. Absolute motion represents pure, unconditioned consciousness. Now, absolute abstract space should not be thought of as an empty void, but rather a boundless container filled with or made up of a divine essence or divine substance, which may be only actuated, that is, moved into action by the other aspect, absolute abstract motion, pure consciousness, symbolized in the secret doctrine by the term, the great breath. And we all know that science confirms that space is not an empty void. Now, according to the secret doctrine, the great breath or pure consciousness is that aspect of the absolute that is the root of all individual consciousness and the source of the original force that supplies the guiding intelligences in the scheme of cosmic evolution. And according to the secret doctrine, the undifferentiated divine substance is that aspect of the absolute which underlies all visible or objective planes of nature and is the underlying substance or matter in all its grades, underlying substance of matter in all its grades of differentiation. Now, moving with HPB from the plane of absolute abstraction down to the plane of the manifested universe, pre-cosmic ideation, that is pure consciousness, and pre-cosmic substance shows up as a duality, spirit and matter, subject and object. Now, spirit, consciousness, and matter, substance, are not separate entities. They are the two aspects of the one absolute reality manifesting on the cosmic and microcosmic plane. Moreover, according to HPB, the contrast of spirit and matter constitute the basis for the conditioned being and objective manifestations. HPB states that separate and apart from cosmic ideation, cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction, and separate and apart from cosmic substance, cosmic ideation could not manifest as individual consciousness. Which essentially means that it is a root principle, and our connection to it is unquestionable. Now, are there any questions? Yes.
If our connection to it is unquestionable and it sounds like inseparable from the all, the first comes to this student's mind, know thyself. So we're constantly learning ourselves and our connection with the all. And does this suggest that we have a role in our future?
Well,
long-term future, millions and thousands of years, you know.
I think beyond question, the answer to that is yes, we do have a role, but more than a role, we have a responsibility. And the responsibility to do what you were talking about, and that is to find and know ourselves. Now, are there any other questions?
I'm trying to think of the question.
Oh.
I'm formulating it, so you can
Okay.
continue to respond, and I'll try to formulate.
So you're suggesting that we have this responsibility to ourselves and to the all, to everyone else, to do what is moral and ethical and right, and as that catches on throughout society, that changes us from this, what is called the age of Kali Yuga, to the Golden Age, or that has a major impact in this process?
The ages that that we go through, the responsibilities that we have, appear to be required, and it's only when we realize who we are that we understand that we must pursue an activity that would bring us to a closer understanding of ourselves, and that just continues from age to age until the resolution of that. But I think the connection between spirit and matter and what HPB lays out in the first proposition is that it sets up a paradigm for understanding our current condition and our current place in actualization. When she says that, you know, it precedes manifestation, that really means that the manifested universe, that is the things that we are and are part of, Earth being only one planet in there, the galaxies, the universe, the planets, all right, come as a result of this thing that sits behind it or beyond it or before it or under it, okay? So everything that comes out of it has to be a part of it. So she's setting up that relationship, and she breaks down for us that when we come off of the plane of this absolute abstraction, okay, and we come down, as it does, okay, to the plane of our physical plane, of the manifested universe, that substance transforms, if you will, okay, down to what we understand as spirit and matter. And although we see spirit and matter as being opposites, in actuality they're only part of the same substance and same intelligence that has always been from the start, from the absolute plane down to this physical plane. So the connections are always there, and I think she's setting that up for us to understand that and to understand our place. And I'd like to move on to the second one because I want to bring some other things into it, unless there's a question, of course.
Difficult to try to formulate this question. If you have the all and the spirit, that comes into matter, why would spirit, being the all, the embodying all of creation, knowledge, wisdom, why would it, when differentiated, not go directly into the human being? Why, when differentiated, would it go through the path of, I'll call it, in a matter of speaking, transmigration of souls, to go to a lower form, a rock, mineral, plant, on up, insect, animal, eventually to human consciousness? Why would it not go directly into human consciousness? And so
that's an interesting question, and it raises the notion of life. Now, the consciousness that HPB is talking about, the one reality is life. It's life itself. That comes together with substance. And substance produces everything that life has to offer. Substance is that perfect vehicle. Just like matter is the perfect vehicle for spirit on this plane.
So it's sort of like in degrees. If it is the all and its expression, it shows itself in all the different levels and degrees of the all that it can in this particular earth plane existence.
Well, from this student's understanding, what comes out of this absolute are radiations or emanations. And as a result of those emanations or radiations, certain things have happened. We have a mineral kingdom, we have an animal kingdom, we have a plant kingdom, and we have a human kingdom. Now, a question that you're asking is that, well, where does man actually fit into all of this? All right? And HPB would say, I think, from what I read, is that the whole purpose of this is for man. That the universe, the purpose of the universe is so that man can exist. Now, the emanations moving from this absolute state down, and I have no other way to describe it, but but in a descending order, or coming out. You have also with the coming of those kingdoms that I've mentioned, you have sound, you have light, okay? You have feelings. You have different planes of nature. I think in accordance with the secret doctrine, there's 7 planes of nature that result. As a result of evolution, because this, I think, ought to be thought of as cosmic evolution. I mean, she says here that the great breath is that aspect of the absolute root of the individual consciousness and the source of the original force that supplies the guiding intelligences in the scheme of cosmic evolution. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about evolution. We're talking about that process. And in that process, we have the developments. And so we have to consider the various kingdoms, and we have to consider, of course, the human kingdom. Now, I don't know if we have time to get into debate as to, what we come out of, but as a result, we have the human kingdom. And we have qualities that have come about as a result of the human kingdom, like we had qualities that came about as a result of the plant kingdom. The plant kingdom, we had a life force, an indwelling life force. Animal kingdom, we have sensations and so forth. And, the human kingdom, we have the ego, the I. Okay? So, these emanations, these developments, really, we have to sort of accept them, and before we can then ask why. And that's what everybody wants to know, why. I don't know if we can come to that. But I think that what the secret doctrine sort of lays out is that this situation is an evolution, and now it's on a cosmic level, and there's an evolution on a planetary level and a solar level. And the solar level, the planetary level is a part of the cosmic level. But I think it's clear from what I've read that there's a distinction between the cosmic level and the pre-cosmic level. And I would call the pre-cosmic level the divine, because I have nothing else to describe it. No other words will do that. So, the second fundamental proposition of the secret doctrine asserts that the universe as a whole has always been and always will continue to be a boundless plane that incessantly hosts innumerable universes that appear and disappear periodically. This alternation of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, reflects the law of periodicity as clearly as day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, according to the secret doctrine. Now, I think this is something that the second proposition, in terms of understanding the basic philosophy that's contained in the secret doctrine, is basically having to do with cycles. And things happen periodically. So the fundamental proposition affirms that the phenomenal or manifested universe, okay, as a whole, and in each and all of its collective and individual parts, follow the law of cyclic periodicity, meaning the quality of being periodic and having repeated cycles. So what that means is that if we think of our universe, not entertaining the idea that there are multiverses, or many universes, but if we think in terms of our universe, then it seems to me that our universe, in each and all of its collective and individual parts, galaxies, suns, solar systems, planets, follow the same law, and everything that's in them, all of the planes, all of nature, follow this law of repeated cycles, and that the manifested universe, over an extended duration of time, I think they call them a manvantra, okay, which I think is approximated, because nobody really knows, 4 billion years. That during this extended duration of time, gradually the universe evolves or expands from subjectivity to objectivity. That is, and then retracts or evolves back again into subjectivity. And that is, from a tiny point in the center of a circle to a cosmos filled with universes, galaxies, solar systems, and then back to a tiny point. Could I have a circle with a tiny point that you do so well? Thank you. Palaya, that's inactivity. Palaya, that's inactivity.
Rest.
Rest, and that's activity. And this is during a mantra.
Mantra. After it on the one.
And that's approximately 4 billion years.
311 trillion.
I'm sorry.
40 billion years.
Is that almost 4? Isn't that almost 4 billion, or is my numbers off?
It's 311
Trillion.
Trillion. is more than
Wow. 300 trillion.
300
Where did I get 4 billion years from?
311 trillion. This is a 15-figure number.
Right.
I don't have enough space.
You got 9 now.
Okay, so I understand this to mean that these out-breathing, part of the great breath, the expansion of the universe occurs during that period of time. And then something happens. Then there's a in-breathing or inhaling. And I would imagine that means that everything disappears for all intents and purposes. Now, what I've been able to understand from reading the Secret Doctrine is that it may disappear, but it's only disappearing because its life force is taken away. That at another point when it starts up again, that the same things that were there are just reactivated. Now, I don't know if that's a completely accurate understanding, but my understanding is that it's not all recreated again, that it's repetitive, and it's consistent with the second proposition of cycles, that the same things are repeating themselves over and over and over again in this process, and that these during this process, there are ages that's being gone through. And the golden age, and the silver age, and the copper age, and the iron age are happening during this, which I think is amazing in light of an article that has come out in the Newsweek magazine. And I'd like to read a couple parts to it because I think it makes this point. This whole idea of the expanding space and the controversy around it and the Big Bang Theory. So, this author says that in 1915, Albert Einstein, published the most important of all his works, the General Theory of Relativity, which was the culmination of a 10-year search to understand the force of gravity. The theory was a marvel of mathematical beauty, providing equations that could explain everything from the motion of planets to the trajectory of starlight with stupendous accuracy. Within a few short years, additional mathematical analysis concluded that space itself is expanding, dragging each galaxy away from every other. Though Einstein at first strongly resisted the startling implications of his own theory, observations of deep space made by the great American astronomer, Edwin Hubble, in 1929 confirmed it. And before long, scientists reasoned that if space is now expanding, then at ever earlier times, the universe must have been ever smaller. At some moment in the distant past, everything we now see, the ingredients responsible for every planet, every star, every galaxy, even space itself, must have been compressed to an infinitesimal speck that then swelled outward, evolving into the universe as we know it. I thought that was astonishing. That's exactly what is said in The Secret Doctrine. And I thought that was interesting, to say the least. Yes?
That sort of goes with what the student last month shared about the point of consciousness or activity beginning, and once there's the point, it's only natural that it begins to expand and expand and expand.
Same model, yes.
Yeah, very interesting.
That is interesting. Yes.
The Secret Doctrine says that that point is a abstract representation, and that absoluteness itself does not have any attributes. It is the creative powers, and she calls it the first logos, the second logos, and the third being man, that play this role within that circle. So she says to us that we a spiritual fluid which fills us a space, which comes about a little bit further on. Issues from Laya, which is a 0 point of science, and spreads itself all through the universe. She does not say that life starts at the center and expands. She says that the fluid, the spiritual fluid, starts from Laya and spreads itself all through the universe. She does not accept the scientific theory.
No, but the scientific theory confirms what she says.
Well, and remember,
The substance of what she says.
Remember, please, that she tells us that what is elusive on Earth is not necessarily what is going on elsewhere.
Okay.
And not to apply the theory beyond our own solar system is what her warning is.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that there's really no other way to look at this because it's impossible for us first to understand the absolute. Second, it's impossible for us to understand things that are beyond ourselves, things that we can't even see. So our ability to speak about them and describe them is limited. Okay, but since, yes.
We can get to know it through the inner light at the heart. She says that is the link, that's the ray, which is linked to the root.
Okay.
And we have the same essence, and by activating that inner light, we can hold it and reach to the root.
Okay. This student's perspective and position in this presentation is simply to try to understand the fundamentals so that the rest of what follows can be understood. And I understand that student is pointing that out, and I appreciate it, but I think that it cannot be, it should not go unsaid and unnoticed how science is actually, it is confirming, okay, the things that HPB is talking about. And this stuff is ancient knowledge. This is ancient wisdom, okay, which really goes to tell us that science cannot explain certain things. Science cannot explain the incorporeal world, and we have to accept, and science does as well, that there is a metaphysical which is what has been talked about, which is what this is. And where science begins to substantiate the things that that could not be substantiated scientifically before. It's no longer. We're in a different time. Yes.
It may be, they say, as in heaven, so on the earth, as in the incorporeal, so in the corporeal. And science seems to only be able to understand the corporeal. But if that's true, in their working backwards, studying the corporeal, they are really understanding, once they understand the physics, the metaphysics correlate to that. If they had focused on that, I mean, the same principles would be there that are in the corporeal. Do you see what I'm saying? As in heaven, so on the earth.
Absolutely.
So if they're studying the earth, then they would really understand the incorporeal.
Absolutely.
If that's where their focus is.
Well, yes.
Or were to be.
Yes. Yes. I just think that the science is limited. It can only study what it sees and what it can get to. It can't get beyond that. So to answer the questions of that being dealt with here, is beyond science. And so people should not, in my opinion, look to science for an explanation, because there is no explanation from science. But there is corroboration of what we know. And I just want to go over this one a little bit one more time in terms of what she says here and what science is now telling us very clearly. She says here, let me just find this. Oh, yes. The second, that the universe as a whole. Now, to me, that may mean universe today as a whole could be if the universe is really a cosmos with a K filled with a lot of multiverses. But the universe as a whole has been and will continue to be a boundless plane that incessantly hosts innumerable universes that appear and disappear. Well, innumerable universes means we're talking about multiverse, okay? And if she's talking about universe here, then let's go back to this idea of cosmos. It's just that the universe as a whole, so the universe as a whole is a cosmos, right, contains innumerable universes that appear and disappear periodically. Now, Tunjai, student, mentioned fluid that HBB referred to. Was that what fluid? How did you? Spiritual fluid. And just to go back to this article here, is a relevant point, because to me that there's a relationship here as well. This part is talking about the inflationary cosmology, which is basically saying that now is looking to explain, science is trying to explain why it's expanding or how it's expanding. Okay, and so another theory they've come up with is this inflationary cosmology, that there's something in the cosmos that's causing it to reproduce itself, and so that the whole theory of Big Bang is a continuous process, that there's an element within fuel within the cosmos that's causing numerous Big Bangs, which is the reason why the universe is continuing to expand. So it's just expanding on the initial Big Bang theory, even though that theory is limited because, of course, science cannot explain what was behind the bang. This is what happened after the bang. That's what Einstein said, but nobody's talking about, well, what really caused it? This theory, inflationary cosmology, is trying to explain what caused it. So I thought this was interesting. Remarkably, mathematical analysis also revealed, and here's where the multiverse enters, so remarkably, mathematical analysis also revealed that as space expands, the cosmic fuel replenishes itself, and so efficiently that it's virtually impossible to use it all up. Now, when it says cosmic fuel, what I thought about was spiritual fluid that you mentioned. HPB in this is talking about multiverses and periodicity is actually how you pronounce it, and that if we look around, just looking at day and night, life and death, sleeping and walking, we can understand that is a fundamental law, so that we can understand why it would be possible and what's going on with these various manvantra's. Thank you. The third fundamental is essentially, I think, to me, it's confirming the law of one, that everything is unified. And I'm just going to go through this real quick. All right. So that fundamental, the third fundamental, asserts that all living souls are radiations of the universal oversoul, which Tunjai mentioned as being consciousness, pure cosmic substance, and as such must make, that is, all living souls must make an obligatory pilgrimage through the cycle of incarnation in accordance with the cyclic and karmic law. HBB explains that this means that no soul can attain self-consciousness or self-realization, and I think a student referred to this, if I'm not mistaken, as liberation. Cannot attain this without first passing through every elemental form of the phenomenal world and acquire individuality. Now, and this is to be first by impulse and then by our own deliberate efforts, and that we ascend through all degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest, from mineral, plant, up to the holiest archangels. As I said, this to me affirms the proposition of the universal law of one. All kingdoms in nature, all living creatures and non-living creatures are the expression of the one life, and having a family relationship, which goes to the idea of a brotherhood of mankind. There was something I wanted to say. about this. But in terms of what we were talking about earlier, is that as the cosmos evolves, and we get these attributes. When I say we, I'm talking about man. That the mineral kingdom, we have minerals in our body. We got something from the animals. We got something from the plants. Right? We have all this, and so that actually means that even if we look at our physical being in terms of our planet, Earth, we can look beyond and see the substance of what's out there in our solar system, in our galaxies. And that is to be star stuff. That is the substance of what we are composed of, what we are made of, and it all comes together. There is no separation. This third proposition, I think, makes it clear that, clearly makes a basis for the idea that there is no separation, that even though from our plane and from our perspective, we may see a separation, that there is no separation, that everything is connected, and that we're all connected. Yes.
When there is activity, and we talk about, we were talking about the light and the dark and the ebbs and flows of light, the rest and the activity. Even in the rest, is it possible that there's still a different type of activity that's going on? As an example, we're active in life, moving around, walking, listening, talking, and we're invited into the state of meditation, which is equivalent to stillness, and some people would say, in a manner of speaking, rest. And yet, in the state of meditation, in that rest where we're not active, there is a different type of, some type of activity going on where we're connecting to that divine, where we're feeling and knowing of that connection to the all. In which case, maybe we're then filled with more light, more inspiration. There's still something that's going on in aligning our physical bodies, in aligning our other spiritual bodies to be more in tune and more attuned to the divine, to the all. So I guess what I'm saying is, even in the state of what we think is rest, where we think nothing is really going on at that moment, opposite to what we say is activity, there still is a different quality of activity going on, which is always movement, always something progressing, always something evolving. Is that?
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, this student would think that if the very nature of pre-cosmic substance and an idea or life concealed in this substance, because in the beginning this is one thing, and it contains two aspects. I mean, if we think of it, and I've seen this done, presented this way, that if we think of it this as a God seed and two extensions. Yeah, perhaps put it on the board. Yes.
Just a quick thought that raised in my mind when I heard the question is that sort of Zen koan that says, "What's the sound of one hand clapping?" I think pralaya is that there's only the one. There's no other hand to clap against. There's no air for noise to travel through. It's truly inactive. Sleep, where we know our brains are just as active, if not more so, at night than they are during the day, is what we call a kind of pralaya because of its relative nature, to daytime, or daytime consciousness. But it's not a true pralaya. I mean, the real pralaya, I think, is real inactivity. I don't think that the student's understanding is there's not some kind of different type of activity going on. It's by definition the cessation of activity. That's just
Thank you. Thank you for that.
the sound of one.
What the student Josh said is from the Secret Doctrine, and she says, and this is the process, man gets absorbed. Second logos is absorbed into the first, then that gets absorbed, and all the way to the absolute. It goes into its pre-cosmic state. So there is not meaning nothing that existed in existence. To see it, to feel it, to know it. So it is all absorbed into its pre-cosmic pralaic state, and all these are absorbed into it. There is nothing that is elusive left, which is, this is stuff that comes into being is elusive because even though it reflects the spiritual world, it is upside down here on earth. And she says not to ever think of what we have been given in the Secret Doctrine beyond the solar system, because that is not talked about at all. So yes, there is a cosmic essence, and yes, we do come from that root, which is the rootless root of all, which what is you said, but these are stages that bring our world into existence, one by one is emanated out, and when it is going backwards, it is being breathed in. The emanation goes to its root, and that root goes into the other root. Because this is the creative process. There is no humanity, there is no kingdom of any kind at all. It is all absorbed into the rest period, and it is absolute rest, as the student said. It is not a conditional rest. But now she does explain in the Secret Doctrine that there are smaller rounds within this Mahapralaya, which we put up on the board, like the ages, for instance, so that in between the rest and the next stage of the development we're going to go through, there's a rest period. From activity to the next activity, there's a rest period. She says some of those rest periods leave our world intact. In others, the poles shift, bringing about tremendous change on the surface of the earth, because the new race that is going to come up is not going to be fitted to that environment that the previous one is living on. So she does explain a whole lot, and you need to go and read it for yourselves, but sometimes it remains the solidity of the earth, sometimes it totally disappears.
Yes.
In terms of man being absorbed into the second logos, and the second logos being absorbed, this is after the expansion, and then the, I'll call it retraction. Please forgive me, this is the only vocabulary that I have. Inbreathing, thank you. So man absorbed into the second logos absorbed into the first logos, and then onwards back to the rootless root, the absolute, and into pralaya to the rest. Maybe your reading of what science is saying, that then expands the space. Do you see what I'm saying? That it can't help but when you've expanded something and received something, when you're going back in, redepositing, so to speak, that expands that pralaya, that space, and even though it's a rest period, it's still holding more than it had before. And that's the, do you see what I'm saying?
She says you cannot add to it, neither can you take from it. That it's in the secret doctrine. It's not my words, but that's what she said.
Josh.
And yeah, she also says in the secret doctrine that that individuality that is us as individuals is somehow, she uses the word paradoxically, preserved from one manvantra to the next through that period of pralaya. Since all is absorbed into absolute abstract nothing/everythingness, how that's possible, our minds obviously can't conceive, and she doesn't even try to explain it. She just says, this is where our minds teeter at the edge of paradox. So, it's, I think, important to understand that although this is a repetitive process, it is an evolving process, that every time it happens that there's a gain of some kind, yet nothing can be added to it. So how can we have a gain and yet nothing can be added to it? So it's an evolution. It's how evolution happens. It's like it becomes this gestalt process where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That they become organized in some way that gives them some greater efficiency or some greater evolutionary status or purpose of expression. You know, you can take a crate full of automobile parts and shake it up as many times as you want, but it's not going to make an automobile. It's all the same parts, all the same stuff. You have to apply intelligence to it. You have to apply a system, through some, systematization of the elements of the universe that exist in that absolute state. There is some organizing, activity, and then it all gets taken back, but it's not lost. So although it's cyclical, it's not a cycle that repeats itself. It's a cycle that repeats, circularly, but in a spiral. That it's on a newer, higher level each time.
Thank you for that.
And if we're using words like on a higher level, if we're using words like gain, axiomatically, if there's nothing that can be added or taken away, we cannot use words like higher level or gain, can we?
That's the paradox.
We must not mix up the cosmic process
Interesting point.
with the microcosmic process.
Could you repeat that?
We must not, she says, mix up the cosmic process with the microcosmic process. The cosmic process is the metaphysical aspect that the first fundamental discussed. And from that, radiation out of where? Where does the radiation come? She calls it the central, the spiritual sun. So there are cosmocrators or creators, not a single god, but gods. That's why the Indians call it crores of gods. So there is, as Josh said, the student said, a systematic way of evoluting, because these are all hierarchies and they enable the world to come into existence. Now that process you cannot apply to the noumenal aspect of life, because that is prior, as the speaker said, to all this process, prior to it. That essence, the rootless root, the absolute, neither can be added to or taken away from it. However, once that radiation, the dot in the center of that circle, is projected, it denotes the evolutionary process taking place, all the way from the noumenal down to the lowest, which is our plane of existence. And the student said there's 7 levels.
So once everything is then absorbed back into pralaya, you're saying the pralaya is not changed by the gain from all of that expansion.
No, it's
But
like
however,
the status quo. And she says the rest period is exactly equivalent to that we use. Because my mind said, why do we have to be at rest if there is nobody or nothing to perceive anything? She says it's exactly the same period, that everything is a status quo. But as the student said, when it evolutes in the next manvantra, it is at a higher place, because George said it's a spiral. Either this way, or you can go that way. It is a spiral, and she says its expression is at a higher level. Why? Because we're going to be a monastic humanity in the next round. The mind is going to be totally expressed. We're talking about the divine mind in conjunction with Buddhi, which is our discriminative and intuitive powers, and that is also the casket of the spirit. So in the next fifth round, this is the middle of the fourth, a little bit further, she says, this is where we're going. This is why it was brought out, to enlighten us and prepare us for that journey that we will undertake if we're prepared for it. What happens if we are not prepared? We will be recycled. Because in those higher realms of the mind, unless these powers are active, we won't be able to go further. And in New York, somebody says, well, I'm lazy. I do not wish to do the work. And the speaker said, you're entitled to your laziness, but that will also have an outcome which will be belonging to you. As you have said, after the middle point, everybody has to make their own self-induced, self-devised effort count in that developmental higher capabilities in us. We do have them, we just have to cultivate them.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I really appreciate that student's concept of recycling, actually, because that helps me with understanding that there's nothing that can be put in or taken away. Because if I hold, because sometimes, you know, as a lower entity, I need some tangible things to hold on to. So the concept of recycling says to me that there are certain components in existence, and when something is recycled, maybe the formation of those components go back into, I'm going to call it the all or pralaya. But the components are still there. Nothing has changed in that respect. But what comes out of that, again, at a higher state of evolvement in terms of the cosmos and the, I don't know how you would say it in terms of manifestation, at a higher degree, having a different type of a mankind being at a higher level, is just a recycling that somehow shows itself differently when it manifests again. But essentially the same components are still there.
Well, we really cannot say, because if it evolves at a higher level, it means that the environment is going to be suitable for that higher level.
Mm-hmm.
She says we're going to etherealize, and our fifth sense is that.
Josh?
Just to give a really basic analogy, I think that would help understand this a little bit. Imagine, you sit down at your computer, okay, and you open up a document in a word processor, and you write out, a novel, War and Peace, Shakespeare. You just type it all in, and you shut your computer off, and you're done. Okay. When you turn that computer on next time, it is not the same computer that it was before. It now has all of Shakespeare on it. Okay. However, all the same components, same screen, same keyboard, same magnetic media, same hard drive. It's like the identical hard drive. The magnetic bits have been rearranged, but there's the same number of them. Whatever capacity that drive was, the drive is not bigger now just because you went and put all this stuff in it. Everything about it is exactly the same. You can bring it back to Shakespeare's time. He's got an ink pot, he's got a stack of paper, he's got a desk. He sits down, he writes out, Henry V, and nothing has changed. Same amount of paper is there, same amount of ink is there, same desk, same man. But now you've got him, so there's been this organizing influence applied to it, intelligence has been applied to it. It's been something has been gained, but in terms of material substance or in terms of expansion or contraction, it's just a more intelligently systematized set of materials.
So, in a matter of speaking, that gain from a certain perspective is not necessarily a gain, it's sort of a reorganizing of what already exists into its next state. You see, it's an opening for more of the all to enter that is in existence.
Right, and to the other
Expansion of
students'
consciousness.
point,
That's what I mean, an expansion of consciousness.
Yeah.
The consciousness is the same, it is in the all, but it needs a vehicle to be able to expand.
exactly, the conditions, that's what
The
you're saying.
conditions
The conditions
have to be
if the
right
ink-
for us to see more, or for that consciousness to be, I'll call it, manifested in a higher way.
Well, you're actually transcending,
Uh-huh.
aren't you? When we're in meditation, this is what we're trying to do, become quiet so that you can transcend to the other planes of existence. What is it? What's meditation going to enable us to do? Perceive at a higher level. So if you learn how to function on those planes, this is what it is that we will be doing in the 5th round. So there's those of us who are being prepared to go on with this process a little bit earlier and be guides to the rest. So
Who
it's a
prepares
tremendous
us?
responsibility.
Who prepares us? Who picks us to be
Ourselves,
prepared?
we are self-chosen. If we want to
So
be counted
it's up
in
to
this
us to-
process, we stand up and we
We've come to the end of our hour, so this is really,
thank
if we, all this, as above, so below, thou art that. So you're telling me I'm all this?
Yes, you're all that.
And
hope
with
you turn it off.
respect to
Turn it
individuality,
Turn it off.
I'm responsible for the Shakespeare. Writing Shakespeare or doing something else with my life.
Shakespeare
Turn it
would not
off.
have existed without you, Herb.
So
I
that,
understand that, but I'm just trying to do the analogy that I have something to do with what's coming next.
You
but
are Shakespeare.
But
You
isn't
are.
it wonderful that the
Turn it
sayings,
off.
that the current sayings of today, you're not all that.
Right.
They're sort of saying
The same
that
thing.
we've
You
now
are
reached a
us.
consciousness that we're able to say you are all that.
Yeah.
And that these natural modern day expressions